Hello, everyone. Welcome in here to Fighting Ever Fighting. I'm Cole Carmody of GoPowerCat.com. Before we get going with this episode, make sure you hit subscribe on the YouTube channel. Leave a like if you like the video. Drop a comment as well. Don't forget to go subscribe to GoPowerCat.com, where you can get all the latest Kansas State news, information, recruiting information, and so much more. Now, let's get into our conversation with the 2022 Big 12 champion quarterback of the Kansas State Wildcats, Will Howard. Hello, everyone, and welcome in here to Fighting Ever Fighting. Today's guest is a very special one. That is 2022 Big 12 champion, the quarterback of your Kansas State Wildcats, Will Howard. First of all, Will, thanks for taking the time out of your day to join me. You guys have finals this week. Are you done with finals? How did you think you did?
I actually just took my own. I only have one in-person final, and I just took it like right before I walked in the door to get set up for this. So I'm all done now, and thank goodness, because it's finals week is no fun. I mean, there's no class, but just gotta wrap it all up. So it's all good now.
And so for the fans, what is your major, and when is your expected graduation time?
So I'm an accounting major, numbers geek, as you could call it. But I'm set to graduate after this fall semester, so in December or whatever that would be. So yeah, I mean, I started off in engineering, but that didn't really end up working out. It wasn't for me. It was a little too much work. So, but I stick with the numbers and went with accounting.
It's like 1 out of every 5 college students change their major at some point. So yeah, that would make sense. And you being a numbers guy, you understand that. I want to start off this podcast by just asking you a little bit about your background. And I know you're from Pennsylvania, not exactly the pipeline state for Kansas State, but growing up, did you know that you wanted to play college football? Was that always something that you kind of wanted to do?
Oh, always. I growing up, I played just about every sport you could. Basketball, baseball, football. I played some lacrosse. I did kind of everything. And, different times there were different, sports would be my favorite. I would say like, when I was really young, it was baseball, and then it became basketball. And then kind of in high school, I kind of figured out that football was going to be, what took me the furthest and what I kind of was my passion. And that was when, I always grew up. I was a Penn State fan growing up. So I had never gone to a game, but I went to like a spring game one time, and I was like, man, this is just so beyond cool. And it was 100% what I wanted to do my whole life. When I was a kid, every, they say like, what do you want to be when you grow up? I would say, a professional athlete. And I wouldn't specify what sport, cause I didn't really know yet, but now I know. And it's really cool that, I'm able to do it, right now, what I'm doing at the college level. And, obviously didn't really expect it to be in Kansas, kind of expected to be a little more closer to home, but it's just kind of how it happened. And, I'm really glad it happened that way.
So a few weeks ago, I talked to Cade Warner on the show, and he brought up the fact that he obviously played football his whole entire life, but he was not a college football fan. He said he only watched the NFL. Now, granted, I'm sure a lot of that had to do with his dad, but were you a college football fan? I know you said you liked Penn State, but you'd never been to a game. Did you know about, did you watch
Yeah.
college football growing up, or are you just kind of like an NFL guy too?
I was big into college football. I loved watching college football. I'd definitely say I was more of an NFL fan, but I definitely watched a ton of Penn State football games. I just never went to one. I don't know why. I got to give my dad some some crap about that one. But I first time I went to a college football game, I think, was when I was on the recruiting trail. Just taking game visits and stuff. But I definitely grew up watching it. Loved just sitting on, after a Friday night game in high school. I would just, there was nothing better than coming home after the film session on Friday or on Saturday morning and laying on the couch and watching those games, the noon games, usually falling asleep about, halfway through those, waking up for the beginning of the 3:30 games. That's me talking in Eastern, time
Mm-hmm.
perspective. But I definitely would say NFL more so with the Eagles, and I had been to some Eagles games growing up, but no, I was big into college.
And so then you mentioned the recruiting trail. Once you start getting onto the recruiting trail and you have these teams that are contacting you, and some obviously are more interested than others. At what point did you realize, like, oh, I might actually have a chance to play Division One?
It was probably my sophomore year of high school. All growing up, people were telling me, you have the potential to be a really, really good, player. You like people, when I'm in Pee Wee, they're like, man, you really could make it to the league. You could do all this, and I'm like, take it with a grain of salt. It's so far away because you're so young and you don't really see it yet. And I was a good player, but it took really, getting that first offer. I got my first Power Five offer from Rutgers, and I was like, man, like, the dream is kind of becoming a reality. And that was when it kind of clicked for me, like, man, this is what I'm going to do. And this is what, this is, kind of my dream coming true. And it was just really cool. And, I'm so blessed to have the, natural ability that I do. And, a lot of work took place to get to where I am now. But, that was about when I kind of realized, like, yeah, this is what I'm going to do.
Was there any school before K-State jumped in that you were seriously considering? And I guess if you saw those schools, which ones really stuck out to you? Obviously, besides K-State, we know that's where you ended up. But was there any schools early on in the process you were pretty leaning on?
It's funny. I was actually very, very close to committing to Minnesota. I would say I was about a day away, but right before I wanted to commit, they ended up taking my offer and giving it to a 2021 kid because I had just taken too long, I guess. I mean, I visited and took, I guess I told him I would take like 2 weeks and take some other visits, and then I got an offer from Maryland, and I really liked Maryland. It was a lot closer to home. So that kind of complicated things. So I took a little more time, and then they ended up pulling the offer. Minnesota did. But I'm glad they did because I'm glad I didn't end up there. But everything happens how it's meant to happen. And but yeah, though I would say those two were the closest that I really like. I liked Minnesota a lot. I liked Maryland a lot, but Maryland kind of never really materialized just because they had so many guys in their room and they didn't really have a scholarship available. They wanted me, but they didn't have a scholarship available. I felt like I flew under the radar a little bit as a recruit. I felt like, I just kind of got started a little later. Like I didn't get my K-State offer till like, I think it was March or April of my junior year. And, that was the first I really talked to them. Like I started talking to them and got an offer 2 days later. But K-State was the one that kind of just kept sticking around for me. And no matter what I did, no matter where I went, like, K-State was always in the back of my head. And it was the only thing was the distance. At the end, it was really between like, it kind of came down to the Ivy League versus the Power Five, and it was really K-State and KU were the last two that I could have taken that were still available for me. And I knew if I was going to come to Kansas to play football, there was no doubt in my mind I was coming to K-State. And KU, I was supposed to take an official visit there, but they ended up pulling that away from me like a week before I was supposed to go, which lights a little bit of a fire for me too. They kind of, I guess they miscounted their official visit. That was back when Les Miles was there, and I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of the Jayhawks, clearly, but it's all good. It all worked out how it's supposed to, and I ended up out here in Manhattan, Kansas, and I couldn't be happier.
And we kind of talked about it at the beginning, and I've heard you talk about this story before, but I think it bears worth repeating. You DM'd Connor Riley your film, and that's how you started talking to them. I know that can't be too common, but just what led to that decision, and once you did, initiate that conversation, do you think they were a little surprised, and how did that relationship develop?
It's funny, yeah. Like, I mean, when you're a recruit, you kind of just, especially at that point, I was just kind of throwing, just sending whoever followed me, I was just sending DMs and, sending my film. And I had my, scripted message that I would send every school, and I would tweak it a little bit for every school. And I think I said something about how, super cool, North Dakota State, Carson Wentz, whatever, that whole connection. And I sent it to to Coach Riles, and he didn't get back to me the first time. I sent it to him, like, I think during my junior year, and nothing back from him. And I was like, it's probably a lost cause. He'll never respond to me. And then it was about, I want to say late February maybe, because I was doing some like showcase. I was throwing for schools who wanted to come in. So I was sending out the dates to a bunch of schools again. And I came across Coach Riles. I was like, I mean, screw it. I might throw him another DM, see if he responds. And, he responded about 2 days later, I think it was, and said, I really, really like your film. Would love to get on the phone with you. Later that day, get on the phone with him, and he gives the phone to Coach Klein. And I had heard a little bit about Coach Klein, but and obviously, like, when I made the connection that like who he was, I definitely remembered watching him in 2012 and when he played. I didn't know much about K-State, but I had definitely heard his name. And then, that was a really good conversation, really hit it off with those two guys. And then the next day they said, we want to get your film in front of Coach Kleiman and hopefully get this thing through. And, little did I know, next night, Coach Kleiman calls me after I think it was their spring practice that they had, calls me after practice and offered me. And I was like, it was like by far the quickest turnaround, I guess you could say, for recruiting with a school. Like, I mean, there were some schools back home like Pitt, Syracuse, Penn State that I was like, I had talked to since like my 8th grade freshman year, and I never ended up getting an offer from. And like the fact that I started talking to K-State within 2 days, I get an offer, like that just means like they saw something in me and believed in me, and that went a long way for me, honestly, when it came to recruiting. But no, that was kind of a cool story, just because like, how quick it all happened, and how unknown it was. Like, I literally knew nothing about Kansas State at all. Like, at that point, I don't think I'd ever been west of Pittsburgh. That was the furthest west I had ever been in my life. So it worked out.
It's amazing how things happen. And
Yeah.
you mentioned spring practice, and a few weeks later the world stops, obviously, with COVID, and you end up committing to Kansas State. You come to K-State as a true freshman without any spring ball. Obviously, I know you guys had a chance to do some meetings and what have you not in the summer times, but you come to K-State, your true freshman season, and you're just thrown immediately into the fire with practice. You're the number 2 quarterback. Obviously, we'll get to Skyler getting injured and you having to play here in a little bit, but like, when you come to K-State and it's just a completely different environment than what you've seen, than what you heard about, what was your initial impressions of that, I guess, end of summer, beginning of fall of 2020, your freshman year?
Yeah, it was, Coach Klein had told me a million times, it's never going to go according to the plan that how you think it's going to go, or according to plan at all. He said, it's never going to go like that. And I was like, I heard him say that, but it didn't really register with an 18-year-old kid. I'm kind of like, yeah, it's probably right. But then obviously, like, just bam, 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 one thing after another. And, you come back and I mean, I had been in meetings, like you said, I had learned the offense. I knew things, conceptually in my head, but it's a whole different thing to go out there and actually do it. And I'm definitely like a hands-on learner. Like, I need to see it. Like, I like to say, hey, like, there's this look that, we want to see, we see it on film. I'm like, I want to see that out there. I want the scout team to replicate that look, because that's how I learn. And like, the first reps I took here at K-State as a player, I think were the beginning of August. And I ended up having to play in a game like in the first week of September. So it was just kind of crazy, like, how it all happened so fast. Obviously, I came in with the goals of, I want to be on the travel roster. I want to win the backup spot. Obviously, I knew Skyler was pretty solidified as the starter, but I wanted to, work my way up, and ended up winning the backup spot. And, one thing led to another, and there I was, playing as a 18, 19-year-old kid. I didn't really know what I was doing out there. Now I look back at it, I'm like, I have no idea how the hell I did that. But, it taught me as much as anything. And, I'm grateful for the tough times that, kind of brought me to where I am now.
I think if fans were to go back and watch the games from that season and watch you play then and then compare to where you were this past season, I'm not sure many people outside of K-State would even know that it was the same quarterback.
Yeah.
With that being said, I mean, there were some, troubles, I guess you could
Mhm.
say. I mean, some not so high moments. Um, How hard was that for you? Because I'm sure that it was not easy, especially you're playing in front of 30% capacity at Bill Snyder Family Stadium. Just what was that? What were those moments like when it didn't go as well as you thought it would?
It was very, very challenging. That year was tough. I was living alone. Me and Deuce, we both had to move out of our Jardine apartments because they didn't want us to, get close contacted with somebody who had COVID, just, and not be able to play just because we live with someone who has it. So we both had to live alone. I'm living alone out there. I'm a freshman. I don't know what I'm doing. It just I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to deal with everything, and just one thing after another. Games weren't going well. Things weren't going well on the field, off the field. It was tough. There were times where I was like, is this really what I want to do? Like, is it really worth all of this struggle to do that? I love football, and it's my passion and my love, but there were times where I questioned that, and it was really, really, really tough. And people were saying, this is you're going to be better because of this. This is going to make you so much better. And in that moment, I just did not see it at all. I was just ready for that year to be over, and once it was, and the next season came, like I didn't play in front of a full Bill Snyder Family Stadium. I didn't see a game at the Bill that was full capacity until I think it was Southern Illinois was the first time I ever saw the Bill fully, full. So I mean, that year was brutal, but now looking back at it, I can appreciate the things that I went through, and they grew me up. I mean, a lot earlier than I expected, and kind of forced me to grow up a little bit quicker than I thought I would have had to. But man, yeah, it was tough, and definitely, with the help of my coaches and family, I was able to get through it and all that, and make it out the other side. But there, it definitely was not easy, and there was a lot of strife and a lot of challenges that went into everything that I did.
And then the following year, I mean, it's close to the same story. Obviously, you have
Mhm.
that year of experience, but Skylar goes down, you come in, and then you get banged up a little bit. Eventually, Skylar does come back, and you end up playing in 4 or 5 games. Um, did you need that season to kind of take a step back and refine your game and see where you are?
I think it taught me a lot because, I felt like after my freshman year, I'm like, okay, I'm a little more comfortable. I'm settled in. I know the offense. I know how this stuff works. I've been out there. And if I get a shot, I'm going to go out there and be so much better. And then I go out there and, everything kind of feels like it's falling apart a little bit, especially in that Southern Illinois game. I was halftime of that game was brutal, man. It was just a mental fight, just constantly, in my own head. And I had never really had that before. I feel like that was the first time I'd truly like questioned myself. And, I feel like I was always a confident guy, and man, confidence is literally all it is. If you have confidence as a especially as a quarterback, but just in football in general, you play with confidence, then you're going to play well. If you don't, then you're not. Like, that's pretty much all it boils down to. And it took me kind of seeing myself do it this year to really believe that I could. And like, I always knew deep down that I had it in me and I could. But you and you want to keep believing that, but like deep down, like there's sometimes you question it a little bit. And when I went out there at TCU this year, that was kind of the moment when it clicked. I saw myself throw a couple touchdown passes, make a couple plays here and there. I'm like, man, I can do this. It's like, this is not out of my reach. It just took me kind of seeing that to kind of believe it. And definitely that second year was disappointing, and it took a lot of patience, but this it all paid off this past year, and I'm excited this year to kind of finally have it be my show. And because I haven't gone into a season where I'm slated as the starter yet. I've just been coming off the bench and helping off the bench. So now it'll be nice to finally get, it be my team and my kind of show.
And before we get into this past season and looking ahead towards the 23 season, I want to ask you about what your reaction was when the coaches informed you that they were going to go out and get another quarterback prior to last season. And that obviously ends up being Adrian. I know you've talked about how close you guys were, but that had to have been challenging because I'm sure after 2 years you were chomping at the bit to, like you mentioned, it to be your show.
Yeah, I was not happy. I'll say that I was not very happy. They told me up front. They said we're going to try and go get a transfer, and they didn't know if it was going to be a younger guy to come in and compete with me, or if it was going to be an older, guy. Obviously, it was Adrian, and being an older guy, like and they said it was going to be a competition, but I kind of knew that, you know, it really wasn't going to be a competition, no matter how well I played, because I feel like I had a really good fall camp, and all that. But it ended up, I'm like, there's no way I'm gonna like this guy. Obviously, like, he's my competition, and he comes in and he just could not be a better dude. It's like one of those guys that you just can't help but liking and just being like, attracted to, and like he was just so good in every way and taught me a lot, in the sense of on the field and off the field, because he has dealt with a lot of, I would say, the same similar type problems that I've dealt with, but even on a larger scale. And we have had a ton of talks just about how he deals with that, how I deal with that, and he helped me so much. He helped me grow up a ton this year, and on the field stuff too. Like, he just had a different perspective coming from a different program, and they did things totally different. And I was in the same program, the same philosophy, the same mindset the whole time I've been in college. So hearing somebody who had a separate mindset, and like, he's like, maybe, because in our minds at K-State, there's like, maybe we don't like this play versus this coverage. And he's like, well, maybe we can do it. Like, we did it here in Nebraska. Like, there was just things like that, kind of opened my eyes to see, like, there's not just one way of playing football. There's not one way of doing things. Like, you can do it in a bunch of different ways. And I can't say enough good things about Adrian. I know I've said that a million times, to a million different people, but at first it wasn't great. It was frustrating, but and getting to know him, and if I could do it over again, I would do it the same. I wouldn't change a thing. So.
And obviously, that relationship helped foster a Big 12 championship. I'm sure that Adrian will remember that forever, as will you. The question is, what comes next? And as you mentioned, it is your ship now. There is no other veteran quarterback in there competing with you. How do you take the success that you had last season and not get complacent?
Yeah, that's a huge piece, is that, I feel like there's more out there for us. And I feel like, ending the season the way we did in the Sugar Bowl was almost good in a way, because I feel like we kind of still have that hunger. Like, man, there's more out there for us. Yeah, we won the Big 12, but we didn't win our bowl game, and we didn't win a national championship. Like, that's the pinnacle. And we keep saying this year, like, we want to raise the bar. And I feel like, we want to make history. We want to be the first team to go back-to-back Big 12s. We want to be the first team to win a national championship. And I really think that that's attainable. Like, I think that's not out of reach of this team. And the fact that, I think everyone in the program is trying to kind of push that envelope of saying, this is not out of the ordinary. This isn't just a fluke, just a 1-year thing. Like, we're going to be at the top of the Big 12 for years to come. This is the new normal here. And, every day just live into the standard of what that is, and trying to, just keep everybody in that mindset, and, thinking about raising the bar, and thinking about, like, I don't care how good we were last year. Like, how much better can we be? How good can we be this year? That's how I'm trying to kind of look at it. And I think, if you ask any of the other leaders, or really anybody on the team, I think they would say the same thing.
That challenge is not one to be taken lightly. I mean, throughout the years, we've seen teams that win Big 12 championships go struggle from being the hunter to being the hunted.
Mm-hmm.
You guys obviously are tasked with that this year, and you lose your friend Deuce Vaughn, but you gain Trayshawn Ward at the running back position. You lose Malik Knowles at the receiver position, but you get a Keegan Johnson at the wide receiver position. How much different do you feel like the offense will be this year as opposed to last year with some of these new faces?
I think it's definitely, obviously, we're gonna miss Deuce, we're gonna miss Malik. Those dudes were game changers and phenomenal players. But I feel like not much has changed. I think we're definitely trying to push the ball down the field a little more. We're trying to get those receivers involved as much as we can. Anytime we can get them an easy catch, get them in space, we're gonna do it. And obviously having Trayshawn and DJ in the backfield with me is those two are phenomenal backs, both of them in their own way. DJ's super strong, but also really fast and can make some really good cuts. Trayshawn's super shifty, really good out of the backfield too, in receiving the ball, and he's just a really good running back. He was a huge pickup for us, and then obviously having Keegan on the outside, having guys like Jaden Jackson, guys like RJ, Phil, obviously like coming back. I think the overarching look at our offense. I think nothing. We're not really changing much. We're just trying to be more aggressive and trying to be more detail oriented with how we do things. I think that we look back at last year and we said, we had a really good year offensively. We did a lot of really good things. But if you look at it and you look at the stats, like we were really good. We were right up there with TCU. I think we were number 2 in a lot of different things at TCU. But you really look at it, you watch the film, and there's like, man, there's so many things that we kind of messed up. Just little things here and there, like little tweaks that we could have made. Like, there was one. I remember there's one play against Alabama. If we get back to the backside backer on a simple power play that nobody in the stands is going to see. We just ran power, and I think we got like 8 yards out of it. So it was a good play. But if we get to the backside Sam who folded in and made the play, it's a touchdown. I mean, nobody touches Deuce. Like, there's just little things like that everywhere. That, man, if we get that cleaned up and we kind of focus on those details, then we know we can that level of like where we can go. That's how good we can be, and there's still more to achieve there, and definitely want to push the ball down the field more. Want to do some RPOs and stuff like that, and get everyone involved as much as we can, because we got some phenomenal playmakers on the outside and running backs, and Ben Sinnott obviously too. Like I'm spoiled with as much talent as I have on this offense, and obviously having the whole O-line back is tremendous as well.
Yeah, and I got 2 more things for you before we wrap this up. The last one will be nice, quick, and easy. I want to ask you first about Collin Klein. Take me back to December, January, February, the rumors of Collin Klein and maybe a Notre Dame or another school potentially taking him from the staff. What was your reaction like, A, when you found out that might actually be a real possibility, and B, when you finally find out that he is staying and he is going to be around?
Yeah, Coach Kleiman definitely kept me in the loop on that one, and that was very important to me to keep him here, just because of the relationship that we have. He's helped me through all the stuff that I've been through here, I guess you could say, and he's kind of been that guy that's been there through all of that for me. Tough time. We've had good days and bad days, together and separately, and I kind of told him that, and I know that that's kind of what kept him here is those relationships, and the roots that he has. Obviously I wasn't there to make the decision, but that I think is what really kept him here, and that's why we value that so much. That's why we're a special place, is because of things like that. You could go to a big name school, but you want to stay here because of the people, because of the relationships that you have, and because we want to do something really big here. We feel like he said there's more to do. I feel like we're not done, and that was something I said to him. I was like, I feel like we could do so much more here, and he's just been such a huge part of my journey here. And like I told him, I said I would just hate to see you leave, and I just tried to, I tried to talk to him as much as I could, and obviously the decision was on him and his family. But so glad that he came back and decided to, because truly there is more for us to do. And with him calling the plays, I feel beyond confident with how this season could go.
All right, fill in the blank for me as we wrap up Fighting Ever Fighting. Will Howard's goal for 2023 is?
Oof, we talking personal or team?
It can be whatever.
I mean, all right, I'll give personal, and then I'll give team. Personal, I feel like if you don't make your goals high, then you're not really working hard at all. I want to win the Heisman, and I think our team goal is a national championship. So I think that somebody told me one time your goals should be so high that you don't even believe you can achieve them, and then when it's all said and done, then you're going to achieve more than you ever thought you could. So I'm really, really excited for this year, and think that, there's some really, really good things we can do out there.
All right, there you have it. There's your quarterback of your 2023 Kansas State Wildcats, Will Howard. Will, thanks for taking the time out of your day, and we'll talk to you again this fall.
Thanks, Cole.